Hi everyone. It's great day. I here to Jonathan. Nice to see you, Jonathan.
Hi, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks to coming to into Soul Java. Eh, tell us about your tour. You make a world tour, leaving Quarkus to
Yeah, I've been talking in several meetups now about this migration from Spring Boot to Quarkus, and yeah, it's a pleasure for me to share with anyone that wants to hear
great.
and to listen.
Jonathan, I share your screen and
Okay.
your stage. Thanks to coming and go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Um, Sorry, I can't speak Brazilian Portuguese. Sorry, I would like to be able at least to say something. I can say obrigado for being here and listening to my talk. And well, I'm going to share with you my experience doing a migration. So I'm not going to teach you anything. Simply is showing my experience. Uh, I let's take that when I go to talks or organize conferences or meetups like these that Leonardo is organizing, I love to have talks that are showing real experiences, not those super fancy hello worlds that are working everywhere, but things that people have experienced. This is only a bit of that because this is not a production application, but it is something. So I've suffered from the migration, so I can tell from my own experience how it is to migrate. So this talk has been motivated just because I've been a user of a Spring Boot, as I assume that some of you are, and I have my own feelings about my experience. And what happened is that I heard about Quarkus. So I heard everywhere about Quarkus. So I decided to test it on my own hands, let's say, and see uh, with my own eyes how it is to work with Quarkus. So I accepted the challenge in order to migrate an application, and I'm showing to you which is my experience. First, this is more or less the topics that I'm going to cover in this talk. Well, first of all, I will introduce myself, but because probably most of you don't know me, um, what can you expect of this presentation? So be sure that you are here because you are going to have what you expect. Then I will explain a bit what it is Quarkus for those of you that do not know what it is, and why I decided to migrate. And I will give you some hints that why you could consider if it's okay for you to migrate. Then the steps that I follow to do the migration on this specific project. Then I will give a shallow performance comparative between the different approaches, Spring Boot and Quarkus. And finally, I will give some references that they help me in order to migrate, and I expect that it will help you too if you want to migrate or if you want to know more. Well, who am I? This guy on the left, and I'm one of the organizers of the Java user group at Barcelona, and also I'm co-founder of JVC and Conf, conference that we have in Barcelona. And this next July, we are going to have the 6th edition. for more than 700 people that we had in the past edition on 2019. And I'm also a software engineer working at Red Hat in the application modernization and migration team. You can find me in any of these links. So in Twitter, I tend to tweet several technology things and other things that simply cross my mind. Also, you can use my email in order to, if you have questions, if you have doubts, I will be more than glad to try to help you. My blog, where you can find the article of this presentation and other articles, would recommend checking the test containers article there. That's a technology that allows you to test your application in the continuous integration platform as if you were in production. It was very interesting for me to try this technology. And well, the link for my GitHub repositories, where you can find my code for this presentation, or my work at Red Hat, or my other own private repositories that are not private, are public, but are my pet projects, let's say. So what can you expect of this presentation? Well, first, I would like to tell you that, well, I will be more than glad to answer any question that you have anytime. So don't bother to interrupt me and ask me anything that you want. Well, you are going to find here an opinionate. It's an opinion, so it's a presentation that it is only my opinion. It's not a magistral lecture of anything, just simply showing my opinion, my way of doing things, and my experience. It is something that works, so it's not something that in theory works. No, it is working, but it's not the way of doing this presentation. So I mean, it's not the way. You can find other ways to do this migration, and this is only the way that I follow. In fact, during the presentation, I will show you two approaches, but well, you can end up having yours. The versions that I've used here are 2.2.5 for Spring Boot and 1.7.0 for Quarkus. Okay, so during the presentation, I will show you some screenshots of games that I was playing when I was younger, let's say. So if you know the names for all of them, please put it in the chat, because I will be super happy to know that there's people like me over there. Okay, let's see a brief description of Quarkus. So what it is, Quarkus? Well, in fact, it's a technology stack that you can have in 3 different flavors, so Java, Scala, and Kotlin, that it is mainly focused on creating applications that are native for Kubernetes, so interact with Kubernetes super easy, and also that are compatible with GraalVM in order to be compiled and generated a native application where you don't need the JDK or the JRE to run the application. Also, it can run on standard OpenJDK if you want. And also, one of the things that I like probably the most of Quarkus is that it is not reinventing the wheel. So you can think about Quarkus as something that takes place during the build, but during your normal coding, you will use a bit of Quarkus, but most of your code will not have anything to do with Quarkus. It will be related to the usual technologies, libraries that you have been using from the past. So it's reusing standard libraries well known and used among the community. The key facts of Quarkus that I want you to have in mind is that it's super fast compared to the traditional stack. Also, it has lower footprint, so it consumes less memory. Also, it's focused on easy to code. What I mean by that is that it is not reinventing the wheel, as I said, and it doesn't imply that you need to learn new annotations. Well, you will need to learn few, but the most of your code is going to be the classical code. So you don't need to learn a lot of things to use Quarkus. Also, it's open source. It's a must, at least for me. It has fast-paced releases. That what I mean is that they are creating a new release every 2 weeks. So there are lots of bug fixes. There's a lot of new features, new extensions. What are extensions? I will explain it later. So it's a technology that it is growing super fast with a lot of people pushing code there. So it's something that is very, very, very alive. And it implies using, as I said before, several technologies that are already there. And those are the extensions. At the moment, there are more than 90 extensions. So you can have, well, you see here, but some of them, Kafka, Camel, Keycloak, Hibernate, but there are tons of them. So those technologies, you simply just use the extension. So it's a dependency in your POM, and that's it. You will continue working with the extension, with your usual code that you have been using on other applications. A bit of the evolution of Quarkus. Well, it's about 2 years, not more, from the first release, and it's been like a super fast expansion of the tool. So a lot of people are using it. There are several companies, big companies, already using it in production. So in about 2 years, the growth has been amazing. And yeah, you can see here only some of the releases, and well, in the end, it's about one minor release every 2 weeks. So it's a lot of code being pushed every day. This is a bit to show the facts that I showed before. So if we compare the memory footprint between a traditional stack with Quarkus native, you are coming from 140 megs to 12. So it's a dramatical change. So that can lead you to do several adjustments in your infrastructure. So for instance, using smaller machines, if you are using Amazon or other cloud providers, that means you are going to pay less. It allows you to increase the, let's say, cluster density, where, well, you can have, with the same resources, you can have more applications running, or simply pay less. So it's something that that it's very interesting to consider. It also, regarding boot time, it also goes from more than 4 seconds on a traditional stack to Quarkus and native that it is 16 milliseconds. So the difference is also dramatic, and this can lead you to consider moving your application into microservices that now they are really micro in terms of performance, which can lead you to move to serverless. So instead of having a machine running 24/7 in Amazon and paying for all the time that you are using that machine, even when you are not receiving any request, or you are receiving only few requests, you can go to serverless using Lambdas, and then you are going to pay only by the time that your application is up. So you can create your applications in order to receive a request, execute a process, transform, and return, and bye bye. So then you are going to pay only for that fraction of time. Also, it means that your applications can start and stop very quickly, because you don't need to wait 4 seconds for a machine to start. So you can start and kill machines in a fraction of a second, and then you are going to only pay for that time. So it allows to think on moving applications from the traditional stack, let's say, into more modern stacks where you can save money, or even you can have more power with the same resources. This is only to show that, well, this is a screenshot, very old, but only wanted to show about the new issues and closed issues that were happening on, well, first month of this year. So it's a lot of changes, and now they are even more and more and more changes per month that period that I'm showing. But I wanted to show that only 1 year after, this project was very, very, very alive. Well, and you can see here, well, there are almost 4,000 stars in GitHub. That's quite interesting. So, well, it's a very alive project. Well, first, I've introduced myself. You know who is talking to you. Now, I have showed what it is Quarkus, and what can you expect of this presentation. Now let's move to the different stage and see the details of this migration. Again, I hope that most of you know which is this game, because I never succeeded the stage 1. So for me, it was very, very fun to put this screenshot, meaning a stage 2, because I never got to the stage 2. So, okay, what about the migration? Why I did this migration? Because I could be doing lots of things. I don't know, seeing lots of series in different streaming providers. But I decided to invest my time migrating a Spring Boot application. And why? Well, my experience with the Spring Boot, it's been that it is very easy to develop applications. So CDI, REST, and you name it, tons of modules coming from Spring Boot. Well, sometimes you end up having dozens of annotations, but for that, God invented the mouse wheel. But that's not a real problem. But what it was a problem was that the application took almost always long startup time. So it's Spring is starting a lot of things, and it takes a lot to start, because it is doing lots of things during runtime. Also, tests were taking a lot of time, because again, almost anything is done on build time, and almost everything is done on runtime. We are not very concerned on build time, because for that we have our CI environments, and well, we are not very concerned about build time, but we are very concerned when we run our application in our environments. Also, the Spring application has been always very heavyweight in terms of memory. So nowadays, memory, well, it's important. Obviously, if you want to consider lighter infrastructures in order to save money, or even to have more cluster density if you are on the cloud. Or so it's important too. And also, one of the feelings was that during runtime, lots of things were happening under the hood that I was not aware of them until the moment that I went to the log and checked which were the things happening during the startup of the application. So that was my experience. And then I heard that a new guy on the blog called Quarkus was talking about a promised land where all the ground is green and with a lot of water and a lot of food. So I decided to explore that promised land. So they say, okay, it's easy to develop applications. Okay, that's interesting. But for me, it's not super important, because easy is something that it depends. It's easy for me, but it's not easy for them. It's very easy for them, and it's super complicated for me. And it's easy for them now and hard for me now, but it will be easy for me in 2 months. So easy is not something we can measure easily. Also, they say it is fast and that it is lightweight, so it consumes less memory. Okay, and that it is GraalVM compatible, so it can produce native applications. Well, that definitely sounds very exciting, because then with native applications, I can explore other areas that were not allowed with, let's say, JDK Java applications. So it's common that lambdas in Amazon are created using Python or Node, just because Java takes a lot to start the application, and even more if it's a Spring Boot. But now with a native compiled application, then I can compete with Python and Node.js. So that's important, and that's interesting. It's not that it's mandatory to go to that area, but now I can have the power to decide if I want to go to that area. So the project that I'm going to migrate has the most common things that every project that I've been working on had. So Spring Data, web security, documentation, metrics, CDI, catch. Well, most of the projects have this. And here you can have simply the relationship between the module in Spring and the module in Quarkus. Well, so except for aspect-oriented programming, we have one module. The elements that I didn't migrate on this project, well, first I didn't migrate JMX because I wouldn't say it's not official and supported by GraalVM, but there's some people saying it's not supported. There's people saying, okay, you could try it. So in order to go to very clear supported things, I didn't migrate JMX. And also, this project comes with 3 flavors of persistence that you can decide on the command line, passing one profile or another. So you can decide going to JDBC direct, you can use JPA standard, or you can use Spring Data JPA. So I simply migrated JPA because I thought it was the most common used, and for the sake of time and of the experience of this, well, for the sake of time and for the experiment, let's say, I focused on only one persistence implementation. Okay, so now we have seen why I decided to migrate. We have seen which are the modules of the project that I wanted to migrate. So let's see which are the migration steps. Again, please try to guess which is this game. I spent a lot of hours out of school playing with this game that if I remember well, it was one of the first that was having like a space covered where you could play with the different controls. So it was super interesting, this game. So let's see. Okay, with CDI is very easy. It's about replacing one annotation with another, auto-wired, inject, and annotating your beans with application scope. Well, it's a straightforward, only string replace and changing the imports. Also, with Quarkus, you have auto injection on the constructors and lazy by default. That it is very, very useful for us, that we are concerned about the starting time. There's no way of deciding which is the bean implementation on the command line, just because I told you before, Quarkus is focused on build time. So all the work that it can be done on build time, it will be done, in order to save time on running, on runtime. That's why we could not do this. But we can decide, we can do it manually. So as you can see on the right, with the method, depending on the value on the variable, we will inject one implementation or another. And well, basically, no more changes were in this. About JPA repositories, well, it's about implementing Panache repository base, and you will have more or less the same as you have in a Spring repository. That's easy. You will have list, find, persist, delete. Well, but we don't have query DSL methods. So those methods, find by name and age less than 30, we will not have these methods. We need to annotate our method with the query. With the Spring REST, we need to move to JAX-RS, and it's about notation replacement. So when in Spring you have delete mapping, you need to go to delete. Post mapping, post. The only thing is that if you are using request mapping with Spring, you need to break it down into the different annotations on JAX-RS. But that's it. It's very easy. With security, it's also similar and very easy to adapt. In Spring, we have pre-authorized annotation and an expression language to define which is the role that can access the method. With Quarkus security, the annotation is called roles allowed, and we have a list. We have to specify which are the roles that are allowed to enter. Also, with this project, the security is persisted in a database. And for that, we are going to simply add the dependency Elytron security JDBC, as you can see here. And then it will be configured on the properties file. And that's it. It's easy to persist. With the security, simply that Quarkus doesn't have an expression language in order to check which is the role allowed. And we need to put a list. But that's it. With cross origin, it's a matter of adding this to properties in the properties file, and voila, magic comes. The only thing that I didn't find is the way to do it, not at global level, but per controller, because in Spring you can specify the cores in every controller, but with Quarkus I didn't find a way to do it. But in this project there was no issue. With metrics, it's about using a small write metrics. Simply add the extension and magic comes. You will have the metrics in the endpoint. Okay. By default, it is using the standard metrics, but not the micrometer metrics that the Spring is using. But you can toggle with a property, as you can see below, the compatibility. So you will have the same naming as micrometer. You can even use micrometer extension, and then you don't need to change at all your code. So that's even more convenient if you don't want to move away from micrometer and use open metrics. And as I said at the beginning, with Quarkus, there's no aspect-oriented programming. So you don't, in this project, our AOP was used in order to get metrics for the access to the repositories. We are going to do this in a different way. I will show you. With validation, you are coming from pre-authorize annotation, and you are going to an exception mapper implementation. But the code is very similar, and well, it's a matter of changing this bit and nothing else. With Swagger, you simply add the extension, that it is a Maven dependency, OpenAPI, and you add this annotation, OpenAPI definition, in a class extending application, and you will have your API documented. Easy. It also has Swagger UI out of the box on the test profile. You can configure it also in production. But I didn't find a way to have to specify which are the paths that are going to be scanned in order to include those endpoints in the Swagger documentation. So for Quarkus, I didn't find a way to do it. So everything, every controller or resource was documented. With the Spring, you can hide some resources or controllers. But in this case, there was no use for that. But as I said before, that we don't have AOP for getting metrics or doing any other thing that you can do with the method on the left, that it is very easy, very convenient, and you can affect lots of methods with only one expression. We don't have that with Quarkus, but what we have is the property that will enable Hibernate metrics in order to get all the metrics related to the access to the ORM, that is exactly the same that with the Spring Boot application, it was using the AOP. So it's replacing AOP with only one line in the property. So it's even faster with this. With local caching, well, Quarkus is using Caffeine. That's a library giving exactly the same value. So it's a matter of replacing the annotation, and that's it. You will have more or less the same, and it is configured on the properties for each cache, and that's it. Very easy. About testing, well, it's a matter of moving from mock MVC into rest assured. I prefer the rest assured way, but I understand and I know that it will involve some coding in order to adapt your tests using mock MVC into rest assured. More or less are the same, or you obtain the same result. The only problem with testing is that in this case, I didn't find a way to simulate roles. So with a Spring, you can simulate a role, but with Quarkus, you need to create a user and assign that user to a role, and then you will inject the user and will test if that role is working as expected. I didn't find a way to do it with Quarkus. Regarding resources on test profile, so this project is connecting to a PostgreSQL database, but in test, it is not doing that, and it is using an H2. I would hardly recommend you explore the test containers approach because I did it, and now I see tests from another perspective. I prefer to simply use the real database. So it's very easy and very fast to start using a PostgreSQL in the version that you want in a Docker container used by your JUnit tests. But it's not the case for this. So I migrated using the H2 database that it is injected using this Quarkus test resource, and Quarkus will start an H2 database that you need to configure on the properties files using the test profile. With mocking, well, it's easy. Simply use the dependency Quarkus JUnit 5 Mockito, and that's it. You will use the annotation inject mock, and you will have the mock. Very easy. And we have reached a point where we know what it is Quarkus, we know which is the project that we have migrated, and we know which could be one path of migrating the application. But now I'm going to present you the way of migrating a Spring application, which is doing the less work possible. So let's forget for a moment about these migration steps that I showed to you and start from scratch. So empty your glass in order to fill it with new knowledge. So with the Spring extension, you don't need to do anything. Just simply add the dependency in your POM and don't touch your code. That's easy. It will take your interfaces coming from the Spring libraries, and it will create the code needed in the build phase. So you're using the Spring Web for REST. That's it. Don't touch your code. Just simply leave it as it is. The same with dependency injection. Just simply don't touch it, and you need to check if you are using something not supported by the extension, but it's not the case, then simply don't touch your code. The same with the Spring data. And in this case, we even have these query DSL methods. So this exists book by year of birth between, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we have it. Don't touch it if you are not using any unsupported functionality. With the security, exactly the same approach. And even now we have expressions for the role checking. So it's very easy in order to migrate that application just using the Spring extensions. So now we have the knowledge about Quarkus, the knowledge about me, the knowledge about the goals of this presentation. We now know what is Quarkus. We now know which are the steps in the approach one, that it is migrating from Spring into open source libraries, not Spring. And we now know the second approach, that it is maintaining our Spring code, and Quarkus will produce the needed application on build time. So now what we need is to know if that it is worth it. Is it worth it to follow that path, any of the two approaches? Will I get any value on doing that? Well, let's focus on build time. In build time, as you can see, there's no benefit at all. Nothing. We are losing, not winning, because Quarkus takes more time than Spring, and GraalVM takes even longer. So there's no benefit on build time. But I assume that most of you are not concerned at all in the build phase. So you are more focused on having good performance metrics in running time. So let's focus on the boot time. Okay, this application that you need to have in mind that the boot time implies creating the database structure with tables, indexes, and data in the database. That in all of the cases, it was Docker running PostgreSQL in the same machine. So the start time with the Spring Boot is around 7 seconds. If we use the application on Quarkus but running on JVM, well, we are reducing to a bit more than 2.5 seconds. Well, we are winning. But if we go to Quarkus with GraalVM, so we go native, we are going to less than half a second. So that's for me, it was shocking. So it's coming from 7 seconds to half a second for doing the same. And in terms of memory, it's also a massive win. We are going from more than 600 megabytes on Spring Boot to 250 on Quarkus JVM, but we are going to 21 megabytes with GraalVM compilation. So now we are talking that we are going to use an application that we have been using in the past, taking 7 seconds to start and consuming 600 megabytes of memory on start time. We are going to one application that it is taking less than half a second and only 21 megabytes. So it's a dramatic change that can allow you to explore serverless with enough confidence. Oops, sorry. So now this has been, let's say, the presentation about how to migrate, what to migrate, why to migrate. And now I'm going to share with you the references. So all the materials that have helped me in order to do this migration, and that I think it will help you if you want to explore Quarkus, if you want to explore the migration of a Spring Boot into Quarkus application. And again, we have in front a very famous game. Now this is the latest version, I think, but it's been out there for quite a long time. So for the project, so the code, you have here the links to the source code, so to the original project, and also to the project in Migrated on the branch Quarkus in my repository. Also, you have the ways to get more information about Quarkus on the website, the Twitter handle, and also the page in Developers Red Hat, where you will find several trainings free and online that you can do whenever and wherever you want. And also the mailing list where you can send all your questions and doubts, and the community will answer. About the tutorials or the trainings, I want to share with you the way that they are being created. Nothing related with Red Hat or Quarkus. It's a platform called Katacoda that it is having lots of interactive tutorials. But in this case, you can follow tutorials where you will have the instructions on the left, and you will have on the right an online IDE, even with terminal console, and also, well, in this case, an OpenShift console where you will see different containers if you are using them. So there are trainings on how to get started for the Spring extensions, or using Kafka or Hibernate or Prometheus. Also, it's good to check the document called Cheat Sheet that is produced by my colleague Alex Soto, with all the changes that are added in every version of Quarkus. So it's interesting that you check it to know which are the new things. The web page for Quarkus, where you can start, it's a page where you will check which are extensions that you want to be included in your application, and then it will produce a zip file where well, you can start from that. And also, if you want to migrate an application, I totally recommend this tool, this free open source tool. Well, it's the one that is I am working on with my colleagues in my team in Red Hat. It's a tool that allows you to statically analyze applications, and considering a migration path that you are going to give to the application, it will give you all the changes and hints in order for you to migrate from A to B. So, for instance, you have an application on, well, a monolith application, and you want to go to cloud. So there's a migration path that involves analyzing application considering the 12-factor rules. Or there's another migration path for going from Oracle JDK to OpenJDK, or from going from Camel 2 to Camel 3, or from going from WebSphere to JBoss. And there's one that is from going from Spring Boot into Quarkus. So it will analyze your application, and it will show you all the things that you need to change. In this case, well, I analyzed the Spring Pet Clinic REST, and there are 71 story points. So it is also giving a measure of time or effort to all of the incidents that it found, in order for you to have like a whole picture, knowing, well, which is the magnitude of the migration. Well, you will have this dashboard with all the issues, with all the files, and for each file you will find the code and the issue with the recommendation from the application. And also it will show you like a list of technologies used by your application. And there's also a plugin for Eclipse Shell or VS Code, where you can analyze directly from the source code using the IDE, and also you can even apply quick fixes that are coming with the tool. And we now know the migration, Quarkus, but up to this moment, this is only my word. I've only said things happening to me in my experience or what I've read. But it's important to know what big companies are doing, because what they are doing is implying putting a lot of money on it. And when a company puts money on something, means that at least they believe that they will get more money out of the investment. And in this case, well, I'm showing 3 big companies, but I would like you to focus on the Vodafone Greece that replaced it completely their Spring Boot microservices with Quarkus ones, not even going to native mode, just on JVM, but they just doing that step, they get a lot of benefit. Here, well, I will share the slides later, and you have here the links in order to get the whole story. And now I've reached the end of my presentation, and I only wanted to finish not talking about technology, talking about culture, books, because developers consume more things than that only tech. So here you have 6 books that I've read and I love them. 2 novels. The second one, The Last Caton, is awesome. Way more interesting than Da Vinci's Code, at least for me. Then you have Drive, about motivation, if you want to know more about this concept of motivation on people. Also, Thinking Fast and Slow. This is about rational brain and irrational brain and how they work together. And about sci-fi, two different books about simulated reality that are, for me, that are amazing. And that's been all the presentation. Again, I hope you have you know which is this game. I've played a lot with this game and the different versions. And again, you have here the ways to contact me with Twitter, my email. If you want, you can check this article also in my blog or checking my repositories on GitHub. That's been all. Thank you very much.
Great presentation, Jonathan. Very well. Yeah. First of all, the people not asking for, but I will ask. What are the links to presentation or in the presentation to share the people who watching us?
Oh yes, yes. I will show you. I can put you here.
In private chat, I can share.
Okay. I will. Private chat. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you type in the first question who annotated is the Rodrigo. What's the best and more indicated to getting started? Spring Boot or Quarkus?
I would say that if you need to start from scratch,
Yes,
well,
I suppose.
it
Rodrigo,
depends. It depends. Which is
yes,
the motivation to
it
start? You
depends.
want
The
to
Bible.
you want to go. So if you start with the Spring, there are way more companies using a Spring than using Quarkus. So if this is a job motivation, yeah, go for a Spring. That's it. But if you want to invest time in something that is constantly growing and more companies are interested, and this is a personal feeling. I prefer coding with Quarkus. It's more fun for me, and I'm already prepared to create applications for Kubernetes and native. So, for instance, in my case, now I'm creating the Kubernetes operator for that application that I showed that allows you to analyze applications. And I've created the operator using Quarkus in native mode. Um, so I couldn't do this with Spring, but I can do it with Quarkus. So, well, it depends on the motivation. You can choose which one. Yeah.
Great, I totally agree. And the second question is the Ricardo. Ricardo breaks the question in two sections. How, how to choose between Spring and Quarkus in the interference of application or development. And the interference is the second part. He says about the architecture, components, the curve of
Yeah.
learning, support, and uh, supposing that is a real application in production.
Okay. So can you show me the first one? The first
Sure.
question? Okay.
About the choose between
Okay.
Spring and Quarkus.
Okay. If you need to, well, again, um, if your application is going to be an application that is sitting somewhere in your machines, um, receiving, I don't know, hundreds of requests during the day, I wouldn't bother on choosing one or the other. It doesn't matter. So just simply use uh, the one that more members of your team know. So based on the expertise in-house. But if you are going to have real requests on your application, so thousands, you need to scale up and down. Well, I would definitely go to Quarkus, because there's a lot of involved, so there's a lot of work going on Quarkus. Uh, there's a lot of people from Red Hat already working for Red Hat, for Quarkus. And you need to think that Red Hat also has a Kubernetes version called OpenShift. So Quarkus is going to be always very coupled or very related with the Kubernetes world, and also with the native application. So, and Spring is not there yet on the native one. So if you are in a moment that you can spend time and money on re-architecturing your application or starting to create new microservices, I would start on Quarkus. In the end, your system can have microservices in mixed languages. So you could have 10 microservices in Python, 2 in Java, 1 in whatever, in C. I don't know. So you can start creating microservices on Quarkus just in order to check, because also you need to do an A/B testing. So saying, okay, we start creating 1, 2, 3 microservices with Quarkus, and after several months, we see how, which is the benefit, how was it was hard to do it. Our team has adopted very well to Quarkus, or there was a lot of resistance. I don't know. You need to think about which is the tool. In the end, these are only tools, nothing else. So you need to think which is the tool that adapts best to your team and to your company. But I would invest some time in exploring what a microservice with Quarkus can offer to you. And if you think it's interesting, then you can start creating more new microservices, and even decide to break down some applications that you have already in Spring Boot into Quarkus microservices. That would
Yes,
be my
in your presentation is a very start to think about it, and in short way, it's depend.
exactly.
The last question, let me see. It's about the persistence management.
Okay.
Lucas talked about Panache. Lucas says, Panache don't have the save or update method. It's so if you not save and update, do you do that in the entity manager save or not? Is a context management of the Quarkus that do well in final way.
Well, I know that there was this this thing with Panache about not having the entity manager, but it all depends on what are you using. So are you using the entity directly, or you are using the repository directly? So there are different ways of doing, and I'm not an expert, but I think that if you use repositories, that it is the way that I used, this was not an issue about the save or update. But I could be wrong. But I think that going to repository instead of the entity was solving the issue.
And the second part of question is about the tashed entities.
Uh-huh.
How the Quarkus do that with the tashed entities. If you start in another method, enter in another context, how do that in Quarkus?
In fact, again, I'm not an expert on this matter, but in fact, this is something that's already there with Hibernate. So I mean, uh, I'm not aware that Quarkus is doing anything special in that regards. So the same way that you were solving this issue that was complicated before, it is complicated now. I will check more deeply these two questions because I think those are very interesting, and I'm not an expert on this. But as far as I know, there's no special thing on handling detached entities. So you will have the same issue uh, unless you simply handle repositories and you persist the entities, so you attach to the context. If not, you will have the same issue, as far as I know.
Great, great, Jonathan. It's a nice presentation. The people like that, and I share the link to
Okay.
download the presentation. And thanks for coming. Great
Okay.
presentation.
It's been a
Nice to
pleasure to
see
be
you.
there.
It's a pleasure
Obrigado.
to us. Tchau, pessoal. Obrigado aí.
Okay. Bye.